How's it going, Ghostlings? My name is Ghost Aniki, and welcome back to D&D class, where we discuss everything D&D. Recently, in my Have a Character series of shorts, I released a character named Arwick Hyon. Arwick is an Umbrite, he is a collector, and he has the Archivist background. Now, for those of you who've read the books and know the D&D specific races and classes and backgrounds, you know that those are not official designations. Those are all a race, class, and background that I created just for my own personal use, that I kind of wanted to test out building a set of races, a class, and a background. And now I want to share them with you in case you want to make your own characters, either NPC or player characters, for those three options for your own game. In this video, I'm going to be discussing the homebrew races and background I've created. I'm going to save the class I've created for another video because it's a bit longer, it's going to have some more detail to it, and so I want to kind of give it its own thing so I'm not trying to rush or so that it's not a really long video explaining all this. But to start, we're going to look at the homebrew races I've created, the Luminites and the Umbrites. These are a complementary people, an equal and opposite kind of thing. And to start, we'll look at their history. The Luminites and Umbrites were created by an unknown primordial force or entity. They were created out of a natural equilibrium, the world trying to find balance. With light there is dark, and with dark there is light. They go together. The creation myth states that as the first lights were forming, the first shadows were taking shape in the spaces that they could not reach. As with many races, though, their full or true origin isn't really fully known and is often disputed by historians, by people studying myth and legend, and by people within the races themselves. Originally, they lived peaceably with each other. But as the world took shape and other races began to appear, the people of light, the Luminites, were looked to as guardians, and the people of shadow, the Umbrites, were met with fear. This was born out of a natural instinct that is seen throughout nature. You know, light illuminates fears, and the dark hides dangers. So out of that natural kind of instinct, that natural kind of preconception, came the general ideas that the peoples had about the Luminites and the Umbrites. The gods and higher beings of the different various domains used this to their advantage. The gods and beings of the light domain offered work to the Luminites and shunned the Umbrites, and the beings of the dark domains took in the Umbrites, some by force and some by choice. After millennia of differing treatment, a rift was caused between the once connected races. The Luminites began to look down on the Umbrites, and the Umbrites began to resent the Luminites. Both grew to distrust and resent each other in different ways. Similarly, they are typically viewed differently by the other races. Some favor the Luminites over the Umbrites, or vice versa. Some don't really like either, and some view both fairly neutrally. I mean, that's a pretty standard way to look at it throughout the D&D races, is you have different relations between the different races. And what determines this depends on many factors. Again, very common among the D&D races. There's going to be some historical interactions that have kind of guided their views, current events, similar or differing cultural aspects, anything of that nature will create a cultural view between the races and how they interact. Now, I want to give a quick disclaimer. I probably should have said this at the beginning, but better late than never. As with all the D&D races, the characters or NPCs you may create may not necessarily follow all these like cultural standards and the story exactly, which is completely fine. They may act contrary to what is typical, or may view the other races in different ways than what is typically seen, or just speak in a different way, or whatever the case may be. You make your characters as you need or want for your story. That is entirely on, up to you. Everything that I'm reading out here, everything that I've created, is just what I've personally come up with, kind of as a standard set of suggestions or a starting point for writing your character, your Luminites or your Umbrites, or your character's backstory when we get to the backstory, or your character's class when we get to that. It's all just suggestion and a starting point for you to write. You write them how you need to. But with that, now we get into the cultures of the Luminites and the Umbrites. Luminites, when it comes to naming, usually have a singular name. It's not like a first name, last name thing. There's not really middle name. There's not really monikers. There's nothing like that. They usually just have one name, and that one name is typically associated with whoever they are contracted to. They are typically contracted to work for lawful, good, or light domain gods, or fae, or anyone others that they deem in line with their morality and laws. Due to longtime favor from the beings of the higher planes, they tend to see themselves as of higher importance than other beings. They kind of see themselves as being next to the higher planes entities, the gods, the powerful people. Their morality is usually dictated largely by the entity or culture that they serve in their individual communities. Different communities of Luminites will serve either higher planes entities or different cultures here on the whatever realm you're in, and their morality is largely dictated or formed from whatever culture that they are within. But usually their moral compass tends to point to what is generally seen as good. They're usually good-leaning creatures. Luminite society is heavily bureaucratic. It's led by a council of elders, and the focus of the culture is very much on law and order. They follow whatever laws that they have imposed pretty well to a T as best they can. Typical pros that the other races see in the Luminites are that they are protective, reliable, knowledgeable, strategic, strong, and different cons that the other peoples that are interacting with them might see are that they're arrogant, legalistic, overly serious, unapproachable, slow to act, and possibly resistant to change or differences. Now with Umbrites, their naming usually follows a naming scheme of the culture that they are within, or if they are in a clan of Umbrites, they possess a singular name given by the clan head with input from the parents. A lot of the Umbrite information is dependent on where they are, whether they're in a colony of themselves, a clan of themselves, or they are part of a bigger cultural group. Typically, they have no contracted loyalty to anyone. They'll find work among any other races or amongst themselves. If they are in service to a higher being, it's usually to one of a dark, chaotic, good, and or neutral domain. They don't typically follow any of the light domains, just, again, kind of the naturally born opposite thing, but they also don't tend to follow evil domains. They don't typically associate with fae, and they never associate with light domain beings. Again, this is born out of the millennia of harsh treatment or separation that's been caused. Umbrites tend to follow one of two cultural types. They either follow a clan network, which is, small clans networked together of Umbrites that are led and protected by chiefs that are influenced by the opinions and desires of the people, or they mirror whatever cultural group that they are in and have integrated into. In cities, this typically means that they are seen among the working class or lower. That's rare if they're ever a part of the upper class or royalty. In small towns and villages, they just kind of fit into the towns and villages. They live alongside them, work with them, things like that. Morally, they typically do whatever is viewed as right, rather than following an overarching set of laws and morals. Whatever helps others, especially those they consider their own, is what they will tend to do. And they will adopt some moral or law-based traits of the people or group that they are living within. So they have their own kind of sense of morality of, okay, I'm going to help those that I care about, I'm going to help those around me, but they will sometimes take on moral laws, or I guess you could say social laws, from the people that they are living within. The typical pros that others may see in them are that they're very helpful, down to earth, resourceful, creative, hardworking, and loyal peoples. Some of the cons that the other races may say about them are that they're untrusting until you get to know them. They're withdrawn or closed off from others because of the years of mistreatment. They kind of don't trust other people, and other people don't really trust them. They can come off as sketchy. They are often too quick to act, and they give off a very strange vibe. They're these shadow entities that you can't really see an expression for. They don't really emote because, they can't. So those are the typical pros and cons that the other races may say about the Umbrites. Now we come to the important stuff for playing a Luminite or an Umbrite, the stats and information. Luminites' standard appearance: they are humanoids with wings. Their body seems to be made of light and that light is of a pale color of the player's choice. So if you want it to be pale red, pale blue, pale green, whatever, it could be determined by their environment, by another outside factor. It's your choice entirely. Their eyes are the only distinguishable feature on their face, and those eyes seem to be simply holes of dark color or black. If you choose that their eyes are a color, it would be a matching color to the body but dark. So if you chose to say have a Luminite that has pale blue light, their eyes would be a very deep dark blue, so as a contrasting kind of thing. They mature by their late 20s, and their lifespan is usually 150 years. They count as humanoid and elemental. They're medium-sized creatures. They average between 150 to 200 pounds, and they stand usually 5 feet to 7 feet tall. The languages at their disposal are Common, Celestial, or Sylvan, which would be determined by who they're contracted to, if they're contracted to anyone or have been in the past, and Primordial. Their walking speed is 30 feet. They have a flying speed of 40 feet. Their ability scores are +2 to Intelligence and +1 to Constitution, or +3 allocated to any stat in any way. So you could put +1 to 3 different stats, +2 to one, +1 to another, or +3 to one stat. It's up to you. Their abilities. They have Winged Flight. Like I said, they have a 40 feet wide flying speed, and they will not take fall damage unless unconscious or otherwise unable to move. They have Illumination. This skill casts bright light in a 5-foot radius and dim light in a further 5-foot radius outside of that. And within this 10-foot radius, all magical and non-magical darkness are dispelled. They have Radiant Power. This means you know the dancing lights and light cantrips. You learn Hand of Radiance at level 3, and your spellcasting ability is Intelligence. You are also resistant to radiant damage. And their final ability is Noticeable. This means you have disadvantage on all stealth checks in dim light or darkness. Both of the races, the Luminites and Umbrites, have positive traits, but also one negative trait that fits with their kind of morphology. The Umbrites' appearance imitates the appearance of whatever people they're around most. So if they're around orcs, they'll look more like orcs. If they're around Tabaxi, they'll look like Tabaxi, Lokatha, Grung, so on and so forth. However, if they're in a clan of themselves, they may imitate other races or appear just generally humanoid. The player chooses the character's base or preferred form. So if the character prefers to look like orcs, that's their preferred, that's what they are most comfortable with, then that would be their base form. Their feet seem to meld into shadows that they stand on, so it's hard to distinguish between a shadow where the shadow ends and the Umbrite begins. Their body is black or gray in color. Their body color is normally solid, but seems shifting when changing or melding. So if they're changing shape or melding into shadow, you'll see kind of a morphing or almost liquid look to it, something like that, or maybe even a gaseous look. Their eyes are their only feature that's distinguishable on their face, and their eyes are of a solid color, again, the player's choice, that gives off a very faint light. Opposite to the Luminites, which are very bright light with dark eyes, the Umbrites are very dark with somewhat brighter eyes. It almost looks like they give off a faint light. Same as the Luminites, they mature by their late 20s, and their lifespan is typically 150 years. They are humanoid and elemental, medium-sized creatures, and their height and weight are variable by chosen form. If they choose a creature that is smaller or taller, it will change their height and weight a little bit, but they're always going to count as medium-sized creatures. That's their base. The languages they have access to are Common, Primordial, and one other language of the player's choice. They have a 30 feet walking speed, and they have a shadow speed of 15 feet. We'll get into that here in a minute. Their ability scores are +2 to Dexterity and +1 to Constitution, or +3 allocated to any stat in any way. That just depends on how your DM chooses to play, what determinations they make. Their abilities. They have Dark Meld. This gives an Umbrite advantage on stealth checks in dim light. They are undetectable in darkness, unless otherwise chosen. And as a bonus action, they can meld into and move 15 feet through shadow or darkened surfaces that aren't harmful. That's where that 15-foot shadow speed comes from. While in the shadow, this ignores gravity until their body is halfway out of the shadow. Once that happens, they'll fall through. And the player must end their turn outside of a shadow or they will be expelled out of it. So once you melt into the shadow, you have to move and get out. It's essentially as like an escape mechanism for them. But you can't just stay in the shadow. Their next ability is limited shapeshift. As a bonus action, the user shifts to look like the shadow of another. A creature who did not observe this shift take place must make a wisdom check with a DC equal to the player's charisma score plus their proficiency bonus. On a fail, the creature believes the player is someone else entirely. Their next ability is Power of Shade. As a bonus action, the player may imbue a weapon they are wielding with shadow, adding 1d6 necrotic damage to the weapon. This necrotic damage increases to 2d6 at level 3. The Umbrite can use this skill a number of times equal to the player's proficiency bonus, plus their constitution modifier per long rest. And you are resistant to necrotic damage. And like the Luminites, their last ability is Noticeable. This gives the Umbrite disadvantage on all stealth checks when they're in normal or bright light, unless they're in a shaded area. So it kind of works the opposite of the Luminites, where Luminites have disadvantage on stealth checks in dim light or darkness, where they'd stand out. The Umbrites go the other way. When in bright light or dim light, they have disadvantage because they're very noticeable, that deep, dark, shadowy appearance. That is all the information for the Luminites and Umbrites. Like I said, when creating those ones, I kind of wanted to have an equal and opposite thing going. I wanted two races that were kind of at odds with each other, but that had a singular source that they're just kind of ignoring because it's been so long and they've had so much different treatment. But yeah, those are the Luminites and the Umbrites. Next, we're going to be coming to the homebrew background I created, the Archivist. As an archivist, you've spent your life to this point in a position requiring you to record and store information on a specialization or a specialized topic. This has either been your job, a longtime passion of yours, or some other reasoning that is important to you. That's for you to come up with. Why you're studying the thing you're studying, why you're collecting information is entirely up to you. Your skill proficiencies, you have proficiency in investigation and your choice of one of the following: Arcana, History, Nature, or Religion. You have no tool proficiencies. You get to choose one language of the player's choice that you don't already know. The equipment that you have at start is a quill, an inkwell, a case of notes regarding your specialization, a letter of your credentials, common clothes, and a pouch with 10 gold. Your two traits: specialized knowledge. What information do you record and study? What is your profession or area of specialty? You can work with your DM to determine, choose or roll from the list below, or come up with your own. The options that I have for the specialized knowledge are historian, biologist, theologian or mythological studies, geographer, arcane studies, and anthropology. If you think of one that you want to use otherwise, you can come up with your own. Those are just suggestions. And accreditation. Your years of study and collection have given you a noticed expertise in your specialized area. Others will defer to your judgment regarding topics of your specialty. Further, those within the same area of study as you will give you aid in securing resources, information, and supplies. It may be necessary to show your letter of credentials. The Archivist is a background that I kind of created to go with the Collector class that we'll be going over in the next video. They're intended to be kind of your scholarly type of character, very focused on one specific kind of information rather than, this kind of jack-of-all-trades thing. And they have kind of that respect. They're known as a scholar. They're known to be incredibly knowledgeable about whatever information they've chosen to specialize in, and people recognize that. Plus, it kind of gives you the chance to go like, oh, you don't know who I am? Well, here's my card. You know what I mean? So I think that's kind of a fun little thing you can do in roleplay that could also maybe get you in trouble, maybe not, who knows. But those are the homebrew races and background that I made, the Luminites and Umbrites, and the Archivist. Like I said, in the next video, we'll be going over the homebrew class I made, the Collectors. Until then, if you have any questions or you want to share your character that you make with any of these options, be sure to hit me up in the comments. If you liked everything you saw, be sure to check out my YouTube, Twitch, Discord, TikTok. Check out all the places so you don't miss any content, news, updates, changes. I'm constantly trying to figure out stuff to do on all of them, having fun with it. If you liked everything, share with your friends, share with your family, share with your neighbors, and share with your party's thief, your party's rogue. they're out there doing all sorts of trouble, you know, getting your party into trouble, getting in trouble with the authorities. Show them this so that they, you know, their time is taken up so they can't do that anymore. As always, thank you all for being here. I greatly appreciate it. Have a great night, great week, great day, great everything. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye, Ghostlings.